Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Shift Happens. Today we're talking to Mary, who is the founder of the Self-Empowerment Foundation.
Hello. Hi, Kerry.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. So
It's a pleasure.
tell us a little bit about the Self-Empowerment.
Okay, well, the Self-Empowerment Foundation's a recent project, actually, although I've been in business for 28 years. And the foundation came about, originally we had a small charity, and we had a small charity called the Stay Mentally Healthy Charity. And it came about from a project that we were running in Bridgnorth. But tracking that back, that came about through some accidental research. So we have some research partners, Kingston University. Thank you very much, Kingston University.
Yes.
I'm allowed to do that.
You are.
They were researching a process called the SEJ process, which was born out of my own mental health struggles. Excuse me. So that was born out of my own mental health struggles. And they've been researching the SEJ process for several years now. And when we were doing the research and they handed me the research and I was looking through it, there was all this, what I termed the accidental research. So it's research that we all know about. It was a research that really showed the reason why people do not go for help with their mental health, especially people from the BAME community. Obviously, mental health is a real issue for them to come forward. And I would often find that I would be teaching at the university, a guest lecturer there. And as soon as I'd finished teaching, there would literally be a queue of people waiting to see me, which of course was really difficult because I had to get on to the next lesson. So this research and the experience that I was having at the university was really showing me that people won't go to the wellbeing services on site at the university. So even though there is absolutely those wellbeing services there, they weren't going for various reasons. Either they didn't meet criteria. There was a point in time, and whether this still stands now, but not so long ago, you needed to have attempted suicide twice before you were referred to CAMS, which I just found extraordinary.
Unbelievable, actually. Unbelievable.
It really is, isn't it? And and you don't know whether to laugh or cry when you hear things like that. But I'm a joyful person, so a smile came to my face, and and it's like, well, let's hope that you're not lucky and do it the first time then, because it's that crazy. And then people weren't going as well because they'd had bad experiences when they did have referrals. But predominantly, and also cross-referencing some research from America, most people wanted to help themselves. And I think that there's something within all of us where we just feel that we've got our own answers. And of course, that's the basis of what the SEJ process is all about. So I said, I want to open a hub. Let's trial a hub, because we know this is happening in university. We absolutely know that this is happening in our communities. People can't get appointments at the doctor's surgery. They don't always want to go to the doctors and say they've got a problem, or they don't meet that criteria, or if they do, they're on a waiting list for however long. And that's no one's fault. It just is what it is. But we saw the opportunity to fill that gap. So we set up this small charity, the Stay Mentally Healthy Charity, myself and Dr. Kishi and some of the trustees. And it was just amazing, really. It was mind-blowing. People were so grateful for the services that we were offering, primarily because part of the issue also was money, as always, isn't it? People, not everybody could afford to go private. Yeah. So we have a funded application service where it's a very simple online form. People just fill it in. And it's not means tested. We kind of just trust, really, that people are honest. And we really just want to know that people just want to get well. And so we did really well. And then it then became the foundation later on. And in order to, because we're a social enterprise as well, we needed to make money. And then we ended up developing another aspect that's fairly new called the spiritual way. So the idea is that that part of the business funds the Stay Mentally Healthy Hub in Bridgnorth. So that's kind of where we are now with the foundation.
And you said that this came about from your own mental health.
Yes.
So that would suggest that you have had mental health issues.
Yes.
Do you feel comfortable to share that with us and, your journey with mental health?
Yeah, sure. I'm an open book. I have no secrets. I very much think my life is everybody's life.
Yeah.
And I people say, oh, you tell too much. And I said, well, I don't think I tell enough, actually. I think it's fine for me to share my life and my experiences. So I guess I could track back my issues with my mental health to about the age of 7. Although I did hear a gentleman on your podcast, and it was wonderful to hear him. He actually said, but don't quote me. He said, because the times all get muddled up in my head.
That's
I went,
wasn't it? Yeah.
I'm going to steal that. Because I say that all the time. Because when you've had any kind of trauma, the lines are blurred, aren't they? So you have a rough idea of outlines and times and that. So I'm stealing Ron's. I hope you don't mind, Ron.
I'm sure he won't.
I'm stealing what you've said. So rough timelines, but basically they're pretty much accurate. So around the age of 7, I had a really difficult childhood, as many people do.
Yeah.
My father was an alcoholic, and he was a very violent man. And I think that was the most difficult thing, actually, was watching the violence as a child. He would not regularly hit my mom, but when he did, he really did,
Yeah.
And I think the most traumatic time there was when she just stopped speaking. He beat her up and she sat in a chair for days and said nothing, covered in blood and bruises, and she just sat there. And I'll never forget it. And I remember holding onto her leg saying, Mom, come back, Mom, we need you. And she was just gone at that point. She just couldn't do any more. But I think she heard me, because it was after that she started speaking again, and then did what she always did, bless her, dusted herself off and carried on. And back then, to a degree, it was almost acceptable, wasn't it, for husbands to hit their wives? And, well, of course, it was never really acceptable, but It was crazy. And those times aren't that long ago, are they? So I think, although I was sexually abused as well, the mental and emotional abuse was the most difficult thing. So, but I loved school. I would go off to school every day. I loved learning. So school was my saving grace. So as much as I do work in education now, because I do feel it needs changing, I loved it. It was brilliant. So I would go off to school and I would be super happy, and I had some wonderful friends. And then I would come home and the behaviours in terms of my mental health would kick in. The first thing I would do would be open to the fridge door, look for food, start eating, eat my way through the evening. And that's how I got through, actually, was through with food. Not that there was always food in. We didn't have a lot of money. And, there was days when all that was in the fridge was bread and vinegar. So we had vinegar sandwiches a lot to eat and things like that. So, and furniture, my mum would have cardboard boxes covered in material as furniture. So we were really very poor.
Yeah.
Because my dad suffered with his mental health, bless him, as well. So he didn't work either. You look like you're going to cry.
No, I can feel it. I really can, feel what you're saying.
Yeah. But,
yeah.
I love my story.
Yeah.
Because not that my story makes me who I am, and that's something I disagree with. There's a lot of things I disagree with.
Yeah.
My story is just a story. It
Yes.
is a story and an experience of a moment in time.
Yeah.
But moving forward, I guess by the age of 14, hormones and all of that started to kick in as well. That was when I really began to notice it. But everybody kind of was saying, not that I told anybody how I was feeling, but, people were saying, oh, hormones, you get to be a bit moody and miserable. I was really moody. I was super moody.
Yeah.
Except at school, but at home I was moody, I was miserable. And so at 14 I really began to notice it. By the time I was 17, I left school at 16, and my parents were very ignorant in many ways. And, of course, we didn't have the things in place like we do at school these days where they talk about what you're going to do and plans of action.
Yeah.
So I just left school and my friends had plans of action and I just left school. And my dad had said to me, well, you're not going to college because I wanted to type. I loved writing. I wanted to learn to type. And he was like, well, you're not going to college to type. We can't afford it. And anyway, computers will be doing that in the future. Well, we're not quite there yet. We still need to type a bit ourselves, don't we? So he wasn't quite right there. So I just left school and then there was nothing. There was suddenly the thing that was keeping me going was took away from me and I was at home all the time. And, of course, it was such an abusive place to be that I ended up getting very depressed. And that was the time I was really, really depressed. So I booked an appointment to go and see the doctor. I thought it was very brave. And back then, showing my age now, you had your own doctor, didn't you? When you went to the doctor, you had the doctor.
I remember.
Yes, gone are those days.
Well, because my dad was often at the doctor's because he was also under a psychiatrist, I thought, I'm not going to go and see the doctor. I'll go and book and see a lady doctor. In my mind then, I thought she'd be more understanding, two women. She would understand more. And I always remember it really clearly. I was sitting in the waiting area and I hadn't told my parents that I was going to the doctor's. And I was getting really nervous when I was sitting there in the waiting area. And then I was called in. Of course, she was late, wasn't she? So I was getting really, really, really nervous, going over and over in my head what I was going to say. And I went in and told her how I was feeling, not really knowing a lot about depression, but knowing my dad wasn't happy. So I went in and told her what I was feeling. And she turned to me with nothing but anger on her face and said to me, get out. You are lucky that I don't call your parents. Don't waste my time and come here again.
Really?
Yep. That was my experience. Of course, that would never happen now, but it did back then. So I left, and at that moment, I guess I did what my mum had done. I just shut down.
Yeah.
I just died inside, and just that was the moment where I just existed. And then that's where it gets a bit blurry after that point, to be honest. I was spent some time. I left home actually at 16. Before that incident, because of the abuse, I had a boyfriend, so I thought, I'll go and live with him.
Yeah.
Nice big house. Yeah, nice big house. They had a lot of money. They had a pool table and everything. I thought, this is very nice. But I just stayed with them for a short period of time. And my dad actually came back and said to me, will you come home? And I thought, I feel I've got to go home. I didn't feel I was welcome anymore at my boyfriend's house. So not that they were horrible to me in any way. But I went back home waiting for my dad to do something awful because I'd left, because you didn't cross my dad. You didn't do it. You did what he said all the time. That was what happened. And he never did, He never did. He was genuinely sorry that I'd gone. And it was a wonderful moment. Because, I love my dad dearly. And I could just always see that he was just lost and struggling and couldn't help himself. Although I hated what he did to my mum, I never actually hated him, ever. People have always really struggled with that. But I could always kind of see past everything. So anyway, that was the first time I left home. And then I left home again. And I got a job, and so I was able to just get a little place for myself. And then the depression was kind of coming off and on, but it wasn't so bad that I couldn't kind of manage it. You close down, you mask, you do all of those things. And then one day I went round to my parents' house. I was kind of estranged from them. I would go weeks or months without seeing them, and then I would see them again. And then I went round and I just lost it. That's the best way I can put it. And they called the doctor and they took me straight to a psychiatric hospital. And I have no clue how long I was in there. So don't even ask me. I have no clue. And that was the first time I was took into a psychiatric hospital. And then that kind of was a recurring pattern. Then after that, I would be on antidepressants, and then I'd be fine again for a while. I always thought I'll spot the signs, it won't happen again, but it did. And then I was back in hospital again, or I had care in the community. That was a big thing at one point in time because there was no room in the hospitals. And then there was a moment in time, my life had actually progressed really well. I got a really good job. I'd bought my own house. I'd got married. At this point, I'm fast forwarding, aren't I? But I had a car accident going to Cambridge for a business meeting. And I loved my job. You know, I was out and about and I was meeting new people and talking to people. But I had this car accident and hurt my back and couldn't move. So I found myself at home, and I think it was in that moment I was forced to be with myself. I'd got into the habit of either eating or being very busy. And that's how I survived, eating and being busy. I just was having terrible panic attacks. I felt like I was going mad. I couldn't make sense of anything. I couldn't even decide what to eat. People, you know, my husband said, "What do you want to eat?" And it was just too complicated a question to even begin to process. It was that bad. So again, the doctor came to the door, told me off. There's a real theme here because there wasn't a number on the door. We'd not long moved there, so we couldn't find the house. How dare you call me out without a number on the door? But then when he saw what state I was in, he actually was quite humble. And so I ended up in hospital again. But this time I ended up in a private hospital because work was paying for it because of the car accident, because they said the car accident was a trigger for the depression. And yes, I ended up staying in that private hospital for about 2 years. And they said if I didn't stay voluntarily, they would section me. So I went, okay, I'll stay. You want me to carry on?
2 years is a long time.
Yeah, I didn't realise that's a long time.
A long time. And to be away from your husband for 2 years.
Yeah. I think it was all right.
To be.
No, seriously, because he worked away a lot anyway, so we only ever saw each other every weekend.
Yeah.
So and it was wonderful, the marriage, really, because we were both quite independent people anyway. You know, we were both very business minded. We loved our careers. So he was allowed to come and visit.
Yeah. But 2 years, woo! That's blown my mind a little bit. 2 years.
Yeah.
So this was the final time that you were in a mental hospital. And what happened through the course of 2 years?
Yeah, not a lot.
Crikey.
No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
Yeah.
I was very blessed because being private, I had a team of people that looked after me. I had a very different experience than my experience in the NHS hospitals, which was beyond traumatic. So in this private hospital, I had a psychiatrist. I'm always lost for words when I think about it because, and tears come to my eyes when I think about it because she was the most beautiful woman. She cared so deeply. So deeply. She just wanted everyone to be well. And I'd never met anybody like that cared that much. Because my experience up until that point had been, well, I didn't feel anyone cared, really. Mm-hmm. They were just ticking boxes. Except for when I had my community care. I had a nurse come to visit me and she was lovely. But other than that, I never really felt that anybody really cared that much. And actually, I was frowned upon by so many people back then. It was like there was something wrong with me. And I bought into that belief, You know, I could feel that that's what they were all thinking, that I was almost a waste of space.
Yeah.
But this psychiatrist, she never viewed me as less than herself, and that was really new for me. And then I also had, so I've got a bit of a throat today. Excuse me for that. I also had a psychotherapist. Again, I was so blessed. The most amazing woman who used to see me, supposed to have seen me for an hour a week for psychotherapy. And this is whilst I was in the private hospital. And she would see me often for a minimum of 2 hours, maybe more. She just seemed so passionate about getting me well. And then when you're in the private hospital, the first thing that happens is you have your assessment, and then they put together a program, which I thought was brilliant, and I've stolen that idea for the whole bachelor. and so they put you on this program of things, and I had everything. I had yoga, really nice yoga studios. Of course, the hospital had lovely grounds. You know, really, I was in a luxury hotel, except I was desperately sad, desperately sad and desperately unhappy. But and then I had aromatherapy, I had yoga, I had art therapy, there was cognitive therapy. There was all sorts of different things happening, and they put me on all of these programs. And of course, I was also mingling with the rich and famous at times as well. I was in there for 2 years. They would come and go. I was still there. I was there when they would come back. So when they would come for the first time and then come back again. So they had some respite, and I was still there. But, you know, actually, as much as the 2 years has shocked you, that was quite normal for a lot of people there. There was people there that had very similar childhoods to mine, and they'd been there longer than me. Some of them were young girls, and they'd basically grown up in the hospital. Self-harm was rife in the hospital. I didn't know what self-harm was until I actually went to the hospital, and then I learned how to do that. And so I used to self-harm on a regular basis. And I went from smoking 20 cigarettes a day, which I didn't start till I was about 19, actually, smoking. It was a social thing, because actually the other side of that is I used to go out a lot. I had a good friendship group, used to go clubbing. You know, I actually did live quite well. In my good bits, the good windows, I went out and I had a really good time. But yes, so the people in the hospital, they were there, some of them for years, really, really struggling. And so we weren't getting any better, none of us really, in terms of those group of people that I connected with, all seeming to have similar childhood experiences. And I remember one young lady in particular who'd attempted to take her life and wasn't successful. And then another young lady whose parents had forbid her from telling the therapist what had happened at home. So she was just stuck in the hospital and couldn't say. So she would tell us what had happened as patients, but never actually got any help because she couldn't tell anyone. So, yeah, the trolley would come around every morning, dish the drugs out.
Sweetie trolley.
Yes, they would come. I do remember one day being given the wrong drugs and saying, these aren't mine, and being shouted at. That was a normal thing I found in hospital. If you dared to question anything, you got to be made to feel like the title of your podcast. Kind of.
Like a shit.
Yeah. But it would happen occasionally. They would, give you the wrong meds and things. And I had my own room. And so in many respects, I was very, very blessed and very fortunate. And if it wasn't for my psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and I pinned my hopes on them getting me better, because really then since the age of 14 to about the age of 28, so it was roughly about 26 I went into the hospital, I just pinned my hopes on them, waiting for them to fix me, in particular my psychotherapist, That was what in my mind was going to happen. I was now in a safe place, and these people genuinely seemed to care about me, and they were going to fix me, but that didn't happen. They saved me, and I am forever grateful for that. I did attempt to take my life whilst I was in the hospital, and in doing that, I was taken to accident and emergency. That in itself was a hugely traumatic experience. They didn't say a word to me. They just ignored me, spoke to the nurse, and looked at me as if I was nothing. And then one doctor actually made the comment that he's got better things to do than save my life. And these were the sorts of experiences I was having all the time. And I'm definitely not saying every doctor is like that. I'm not. I'm simply saying this had been my experience. And people don't realise how that destroys you when somebody speaks about you in that way and treats you that way. It does destroy you inside. So if the doctor didn't see any point in my life, well, then I must have been right to have done what I'd done. And that was what I thought. Yeah. But, they did whatever they had to do and then sent me back to the hospital. And the therapy continued until a moment in time where there was a profound shift. I said that right. And that's when everything changed for me.
What changed? What was the shift?
Now, this is where it gets really difficult with words to describe this, really. But I will do my absolute best. So I was with my psychiatrist, and I could see she looked really sad. And I was looking at her, and she said, "Okay, so you've been in here for a long time." And I'd been starting to have visits home. They were letting me go home. The antidepressants were kicking in. I was okay. I was fine. Yeah. I was existing. I'd learned how to exist, but that's as good as it ever got. So she turned to me and said that they'd basically tried everything, and I'd got to learn how to just manage this depression now, that based on my family history, my experiences to date, the constant repetitive cycles, that I was probably most likely going to suffer with recurring depression for the rest of my life. And that was the moment when I gave up. And I can feel that moment again right now. I gave up because the only thing that had kept me going was I believed that they would fix me. They were going to fix me. I mean, I was in this private hospital, the best. I was getting the best, and they were going to fix me. Because I'd excused the NHS because of the abuse and trauma that I'd experienced at the hands of the NHS. Again, must say that not all doctors and people's experiences are this way, but it was my experience. So it was like, well, if that's the sort of people you are, you're never going to fix me anyway because you really don't care less. But now I was with people that cared, so they were going to fix me.
Yeah.
And then she was sitting there saying, "We're not going to fix you." And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to live then. It's that simple. I don't want to live. I can't do this anymore." And I'd been having for a long, long time these recurring thoughts of, quite simply, the words, "I don't want to live. I don't want to live." I would get up, I would eat. We had a very nice restaurant, 3-course meals every day. It was lovely. And I would go through the motions and go to drawing therapy and everything I was supposed to do. And I just got to that point. I said, well, I don't want to live. I don't want to manage depression. This is hell. I mean hell, living this way. And so I suddenly had this moment of absolute clarity, looking, and I do believe that the love that was coming from my psychiatrist was the catalyst for this awakening to happen, because I could feel her love and her disappointment that she had to break this news to me, because they all kind of looked at me like I was someone special. This sounds very arrogant, doesn't it? But I kind of felt that, like there was something in them that wanted to fix me. And I saw her, and the first thing that rose in me was anger. That was new, because I'd been dead to my emotions for so long with all the medication. And all I thought was, who are you to tell me that that's my lot in life, that that's what the rest of my life was going to look like? So, of course, bear in mind that I had so much respect for this woman, so I was not angry at her. I was angry at what she was saying. There was a real moment of love between the two of us and sadness at the same time. And at the same time, I just could suddenly see that she was only helping me based on everything that she knew. This sounds so obvious, doesn't it? What she'd learned, what she'd been taught. She'd gone through everything that she knew to try and fix me. They'd tried everything. And then they'd run out of options, basically, other than to, I always make a joke of it, fry my brain. That was on the list. The team were discussing frying my brain. But my psychotherapist said, no, you are not doing that to her. And so then I was aware of this thought, the same thought, I don't want to live, but with just two simple words at the end of it, like this. I don't want to live like this. And I suddenly had the awareness that there must be another way to live. There must be another way to live. Other people were happy, just not me. I wasn't happy. And then I had this clarity that she couldn't fix me because she didn't know how to fix me, because she was believing her own thoughts the same as I was believing my own thoughts. And I suddenly realised that she even believes I'm depressed. Everybody's treating me for depression. But what I realised was my thoughts were depressive. My body was in a depressed state, but I was not my body and I was not my mind. I am not my body, I'm not my mind, I'm not even my emotions. I was not depressed. And so that what they were showing me and teaching me was how to keep identifying with my body and my mind and my emotions, and they weren't me at all. And so they were labelling me as depressed, and so depressed I was. And I'm not saying they made me depressed, I'm saying they were reinforcing, they were labelling an experience. Keeping me in the loop. Yeah. But not through any ill will, just purely ignorance. Yeah. They couldn't see what I could see. And then I had this powerful, powerful realisation that we only ever suffer our thoughts. I could see, as I said earlier, I actually was doing really well in life. Considering I had nothing as a child, I had a company car, brand new company car, a brick for a mobile phone. I think you're a bit too young to remember that one.
I remember the brick.
A brick. It was like a brick, honestly. I had a brick for that was if you had a brick for a mobile phone, you were really you were doing well. Yeah, honestly. Yeah. So I had one of the first mobile phones. I had a brand new company car. I would stay in really nice hotels with the company. I travelled a lot. I owned my own home. I was married to a man that would travel around the world with his business, and sometimes I would travel around the world with him. Why? Why was I miserable? And you'll hear that from people a lot. That I've got actually no reason to be this desperately sad, but desperately sad. Suicidal I was. And then I realised it was because I was only ever believing my thoughts and then taking on other people's thoughts. So from that moment, and it was interesting, the staff at the hospital used to come to me. They started to come to me, some of them, and say they could see something had happened. They could see something had happened. And they were like, what's different? What's happened? Well, the first thing is I stopped smashing all the glasses to cut myself. Yeah. So that was a significant change. I used to have a ritual. Probably shouldn't go through the ritual, but I broke a lot of sinks as well. Yeah. Part of my ritual. And so all of that just stopped. smoking 60 cigarettes a day because there was nothing else to do but smoke, talk and smoke, So I didn't stop smoking straight away. That came later, but I definitely cut down. And they could see something had changed in me. And at that same time, in that moment in time, when I was with my psychiatrist, I just had this moment of awareness that my psychotherapist was going to give me the answers. So something shifted that day, and I wasn't fixed like that. It wasn't like that, but there was something that had changed. So I went eagerly to my next appointment with my psychotherapist, and I was sitting in the room with her, and I've always been very blunt and to the point, and I said to her, right, okay, you need to give me a reason to stay alive, otherwise I am going to end my life. And she turned around to me and said, I can't do that. I can't give you a reason to live. And I remember feeling devastated, because I was so sure when I was talking to my psychiatrist, and I call it inspiration now, but didn't know what it was then. There was just this knowing that if I went to see my psychotherapist, I would get the answer that I needed. And there she was telling me no. And in the moment she said no, again, this feeling of I give up, which is very significant, by the way. We would call that surrender now. There was nothing to live for. My ego dropped. Everything went in that moment, everything. And that's how I could see clearly. And I suddenly saw myself in a past life. I was sitting in the therapy room, and I had hung myself. I'd committed suicide by hanging myself. And my therapist then, my psychotherapist, was at the foot of the tree in my past life, and she was my sister, and saying, why did you do this? Why did you do this? And I'd hung myself because my father who had abused me in this life was also my uncle in the past life who'd abused me. So same cycles. And then I killed myself, and I suddenly was very aware that I'd have to come back and do it all again. I just knew that was my answer. I got my answer. I'd have to come back and do it again. And I'd seen that I'd done it lifetime after lifetime, and I'd get to a certain point, and then I'd end my life, and then I'd have to do it again and again and again. And then I also saw myself in what we'd call limbo. And what I have to stress is at the time, I was a businesswoman, brought up an atheist, knew nothing about religion or spirituality. Although I did go to church for a while at the age of 17, I thought maybe God had my answers. Met some lovely people. So I tried lots of things. So I saw myself in this limbo state, and I had this powerful awareness that we put ourselves in limbo. And it was hell. Because I felt so bad for ending my life. And I must say at this point, for anybody that's lost anybody through suicide, this is just my experience. But what I experienced was that you put yourself in that limbo state because you take the thoughts with you from the conscious living state into death. And this is why the transition into death is so important. And there's been a work that I've done actually since my awakening. I've been very fortunate to help people transition into death. But I saw myself tortured in this limbo state. And that we're only ever torturing ourselves. It was like I kept being shown we're torturing ourselves, we're torturing ourselves, we're torturing ourselves. And there was many what I call satori moments after that point in time. I left the hospital not long after that. Asked my psychotherapist, did you just see everything that I just saw? And she said, no. I thought I'd been gone for ages. And she said, it was literally moments. But it was undeniable. There's no denying what had happened to me. It was just, there's nothing in me that could ever say, oh, well, did I make that up? No. It was as clear could be. I would have to come back. And it was only many years later when I was inspired to look at some Buddhist teachings that I realised and then could name what I'd experienced, that it's all written about in what people are desperate to learn. Had happened to me. It had happened to me. I'd had it as an experience. So it's everything that's taught in Buddhism and at the truth of many religious teachings. Not that I'm a religious advocate or anything. I'm not any of that. I'm just a person sharing an experience. But an experience that was so profound that I've been depression-free in spite of what the professionals said for 28 years now. For 28 years.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
To be depression-free for anyone. And I think there is so many people suffer nowadays. It's more prevalent now than ever.
Yeah.
To hear to be depression-free is huge.
Yeah.
It's empowering. It's joyful. It's because it is a terrible place to be.
Yeah. Because what we keep hearing is learn how to manage it. Mm-hmm. Why do we want to manage something we don't want?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, I've got this thing I don't want, so I'll manage it. No, manage what you want in life, Yeah. But no, we can be depression-free.
Yeah.
And this is why people don't understand, like at the Hub, we turn people around between 1 and 3 sessions. Not everybody, obviously. It depends on where they're at. But people that are in severe trauma, people that want to end their lives, within 1 to 3 sessions, if they really want to get well, then we can help them. And if I may, can I share a story from one of our clients?
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
One of our beautiful, beautiful clients who came to the Hub, and she's given full permission for me to share her story. Well, first of all, her husband came because he was angry. And he was angry because his wife's sister had took her life. So his wife was a twin. And it was terrible circumstances, really. Nobody should really have to have that as an experience. But she'd attempted to take her life once before. The doctors had said, well, we don't think she's going to attempt it again. She's fine. But however long later, she did, and this time she was successful. Her sister tried to get hold of her. Her sister was on holiday with her husband. And she tried to get hold of her, and there was no answer, and they were very close. They were twins. And she kind of knew what had happened, but they were far away. They were on holiday, and when they got back, they got to the house, they had to break in, and she'd hung herself. And can you imagine that, going in and seeing that? And her husband was angry because he'd lost his wife that day too, which you can imagine. And it was sorted within a couple of sessions. He came back and said, oh, I'm done. This is great. And so then not long later, his wife came. She was actively putting herself in harm's way. She'd promised her family she wouldn't end her life. She'd been to the doctors and said, you need to do something with me because I can't keep myself safe. Unfortunately, they couldn't. They gave her antidepressants. And again, this is not to blame anyone in particular, but we all know that the system, it's just not working, is it? People are struggling. No. And this is the gap that we want to fill. But also to educate that we don't need to be in therapy for years and years and years like I was. We don't. And I'm proving that. And this beautiful woman, I'm forever grateful to this lady for giving her permission. Because I could sit here and talk about it all day, because I know it works. It worked for me, It's because the process, the SEJ process that we use is what was born out of my experiences.
Yes.
And so anyway, she didn't want to be alive, basically. She was just existing, and she came for 2.5 sessions and she was done.
Wow.
So from, I think it was 2022, forgive me if that's wrong, but I think it was 2022 till 2025, the beginning of this year, suffering. The family was suffering. Everybody's hurting. And the husband comes, he's done after a couple of sessions. She's come, she's done after 2.5 sessions. And then, and she says, I just want everyone to know what you do. Because, and all we do is question the thoughts. The same as what happened to me.
This is it, isn't it? And I think that the hardest thing for so many people is I think people recognise that the answers are within.
Yeah.
But it's still understanding or finding a process that can change that.
Yeah.
You know, that can help you to understand that.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to want to be well.
You've got to. It's vitally important.
Thing.
Yeah.
It's the why, isn't it? And the why has come up in so many different, chats and conversations we've had with people about different things. But it's, you've got to want it.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm a therapist, you're a therapist, and there's lots of different modalities out there.
Yeah.
And I think for me, somebody can go to therapy, they might feel great, but then they leave and then they're back in the loop again.
Yeah.
You might give them some tools, but then they need to sustain those tools. They even need to want to pick up and use those tools. Yeah. So what do you think you're doing? So I know you've just said about the questioning, but what is it that you think that therapists out there are missing, what they're doing, with their modalities that they're...
Thank you. It's a really wonderful question. I think first and foremost, people are therapists because they want to help, but they themselves are conditioned. They're taken on what they've been taught. But what we're taught it's antiquated. It's like, there needs to be a real shift, a shift in our educational system, a shift in our medical system, and a shift in our thinking that needs to be. So most people, what they do, Einstein, what we say is we teach everybody how to be their own Einsteins. So Einstein knew the secret, but many people don't understand what Einstein said. Einstein said, I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, swim in the silence, and the truth comes to me. He also said that if you keep going into the same place for the answers as where the problem is, you're not going to get anywhere.
Nothing changes without change.
And this is what traditional therapy is based on. So people, the problems with the mind, okay? So I always say it's like we're walking around with this filing cabinet, and everybody's filing cabinet's unique. And we know this. So, for example, CBT often talks about this. There's the link between the thoughts, triggers the emotion, triggers the actions and behaviours. And that's absolutely right. And I teach that as the first part of the course. It's right. That's how it works in the physical form. But where we differ to traditional therapy is we're saying, but you're not your body and you're not your mind and you're not your emotions. And so there's a deeper dimension within that brings about the healing. And we've made mind king. And that's why everybody's stressed. That's why everybody's getting depressed, because our minds are literally exploding. We're asking too much of our minds. And I say, if I'm going for surgery, I want my surgeon to absolutely remember what he's got to do in that operating theatre. And that's pretty much what my mind is about. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to store information so that we can function in this physical world. The most intelligent man, Einstein says, thinking doesn't work. He's saying it doesn't work. But what is this truth? I called it truth when I first woke up. I said, I've heard the truth, I've heard the truth. And then I realised years later, there's key spiritual teachings where they're also calling it the truth, And it's a bit like, if we look at it in simpler terms, in terms of mind, so we have our conscious mind, don't we? Like our chitter-chatter mind, And then we have our subconscious, that's the filing cabinet. It's where all our beliefs are we have experiences in life, we take beliefs from that experience. And so we're living from that filing cabinet. And it's memory-based, and there's nothing new that can ever come from the subconscious. It's all old news. And that's what traditional therapy is doing. It's going from the subconscious to the conscious and then trying to fix things by being conscious. It's saying, well, let's think about that. But where are you thinking about it from? From the filing cabinet again, which is what Einstein said, it doesn't work. So then we go up a level. So we've got conscious mind, subconscious, and superconscious mind. Now, superconscious mind, some people, a more spiritual audience might say that's your higher self or your gut instinct, your intuition. We don't even work from that. We work from the supraconscious mind. So when you work from the supraconscious, beyond even the intuition, you're back to your original zero state of being. We might call it divine mind. And so when you break, and by that I mean that's what happened to me that day in giving up, surrender, didn't know it as surrender at the time, just felt like that's it. My mind broke, and it was breaking anyway. But when we're breaking, we're all breaking. This is what's so wonderful. It looks like it's really bad that everybody's getting depressed. So I'm not sure how far you can go with me with this. But actually, all those people that are getting depressed, they're breaking their minds so that they can go beyond that. But nobody knows how to go beyond it. So they're stuck in this painful, painful breaking of the mind. And it is a dangerous place, because then that's when people are ending their lives and hurting themselves.
It is a dangerous place, and I think what's just come to mind there when you're saying that is people either do one of two things. They're committing suicide, they're ending their lives, or they're so far backed into that corner, they have no choice other than to surrender.
Yeah,
that's what happened to you. It's like, and then they naturally go to that 0 point. Because one thing that I've always, been taught in some respects, and that's probably not now, but there's only two ways to change, and it's that you're so backed into that corner that you literally have no other choice. Or repetition doesn't work, or very rarely does it work. It takes an extreme amount of hard work in order to make those changes, because as you say, you're living consciously and trying to change consciously patterns of programming that are in your unconscious
all that's
mind.
happening there, though, is a program's trying to change a program, and then you take on a new program. That's all that's happening all the time. A program's trying to change a program, and you take on a new program, and you believe the new program because it just feels a bit better than the old one.
And I can see that. I can see that so clearly.
Whereas when you're in a zero state, see, if you've got opinions, beliefs, any kind of thoughts about anyone or anything, or judgments, you've still got that file. It's still there. It's still there. And people believe they should have beliefs and they should have opinions. And actually that's not true. When you're in this zero state, you just live so fully in the moment. And I kind of hate that because it's such a buzz thing at the minute. Live in the moment. I remember being taught that when I was in the private hospital. And does that happen then? It's like there was no living in the moment. But actually you end up fully present because you've got no subconscious files pulling you into the past. And when you're pulled into the past, you're reliving it in the present, and you're then projecting that into the future. And that's your cycle of suffering. And people think, oh, okay, well, I've had no trauma, so I don't need to sort my files. I'm telling you, if you pick your toothbrush up at the same time, you've got a file. Yeah. If you have fish every Friday, you've got a file. If you drive a certain way to work, you've got a file. I'm not talking about traumatic files here. I'm talking about simply the point that you're conditioned. My psychiatrist would not have said she's got a file, because her files say I'm helping you. And I'm looking at her going, you're so filled with all this conditioning, you can't even see me. You see what through the filters of everything that you've learned to be true.
See, my brain is still glitchy. It's obviously we've spoken prior to this podcast, and obviously I've been conditioned a certain way with my therapies and stuff. So my brain, I'm starting to understand it a little bit more, but my brain is still glitching. So if anyone else's brain is glitching right now,
but that's what's so exciting, isn't it?
It is.
We're gonna have, just for everyone to know, Mary on a regular basis, so that we can really delve into this, monthly, so we can delve. But I think the reason my brain doesn't glitch is because I've been that person that surrendered, because I've had no choice. because I've been in that hell, and the two choices were you kill yourself or you don't. And I've always said that in my heart there's always been a knowing that there is something better.
Yeah.
I've always believed in the silver lining, even though I could never grasp it.
Yeah.
I've always had that knowing.
But you know what? We're really conditioned. We're conditioned that knowing belongs to someone else and we have to go to them for it.
Yeah.
And it's not. That knowing's in each and every one of
Yes.
us. And what we teach is, you know, I was on the radio the other week and they said, well, is this new then, this SEJ? And I said, well, it is and it isn't. I said, its basis is in self-inquiry. And of course, I didn't know this at the time. I didn't have words for it. It was only years later when I was inspired to look at some of the teachings. It was like, oh, this is self-inquiry that I'm doing. This is what this is called. But the problem is people don't know how to do self-inquiry. They don't know how to do it. So the process is provides a framework, a beautiful framework for self-inquiry to happen. And so even when people come from one-to-ones, I just sit there and give back to them what they say to me. I mean, my job's super easy. It really is. I just can see the program where they can't see it. You know, I had a client yesterday. They come in and they're distressed and like, I'm saying, oh, well, that's, and they work it out for themselves. And they know what's true and what's not true.
We complicate things
Yes,
so much.
So much. You're all looking for some spiritual poo-poo moment, and it's so much more simpler than that. Life is so beautiful, and life always has your back.
Yeah.
And you've just got to be fully present to see it. I mean, like I drove up today, there was a parking space, you know, like I was here today, not meant to be here, but of course I was meant to be here. Last week it came to me to keep today free.
Yeah.
But obviously I've got to go and teach for a couple of hours after this. So, I need to get off at a certain point, but needed to just keep it free. And, you know, every day I only ever do what I'm inspired to do. That blows people's minds. And then they go, well, how's that true? You've got a diary with appointments in. I said, yeah, but every appointment I book from what I know to be true. So people might say, can I come Wednesday? And I go, no, Thursday. Yeah, because that's what I know to be true. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, we're going to delve a lot deeper into this.
Yes.
We're only just skimming the surface. And hopefully we'll be having maybe a phone in for people to be able to speak to you.
great.
So, wow.
Well, yes, thank you so much for sharing your story. You know, and next time we talk, we can delve a lot deeper into SEJ.
So if anyone listening, you know, we will put your details down below, but if you just remind people how they can get in touch with you and the name of your program that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Well, okay, so we're a not-for-profit organisation. We have different initiatives. One of those initiatives, as I said, is the Stay Mentally Healthy Hub in Bridgnorth. So if they go to the website, staymentallyhealthy.org.uk, they can find out all about us there. For those of you that are more interested in the spiritual side of things, you can go to a different website, thespiritualway.co.uk.
Brilliant.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you. It's not many people can make this one's brain glitch.
I've just got to unglitch it now. But, you know, that's the problem. You're trying to work it all out from that filing cabinet. It's never going to happen. So you've got to go to a different place to understand. So
An air sign as well. That's another file.
see, you're catching on.
Jesus.
You're catching on. And yet there's something in all of that as well. So it's not as black and white, you know, but in essence what I've said is, you're all just living basically from your files as I was, repeat. And they're not always traumatic files, so we think we don't have to bother and we live an okay life. And I said, nobody needs to live an okay life. We should be like living, like really living.
Yeah.
You know, even kids don't really live anymore, do they? You know? Whereas parents were so used to, you can shut me up in a minute, as parents were so used to telling our kids not to do something, we're literally knocking out of them that aliveness for life. And that's what we need to get back to.
Yes. I've got my 2.5-year-old grandchild for the weekend. It's very hard not that live. Sometimes
I do a course for parents. come on the course. Yeah, no, I do understand.
Yeah.
You know,
I was
I do.
teasing.
No, I
It's-
do understand.
It's an absolute joy.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
that aliveness is. Yeah.
Thank you both for having me on.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, my brain is glitching. Is yours. I really hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. Please, can somebody comment below and acknowledge this mind-blowing episode? We'd really love to hear what you thought of Mary. So, yes, we will definitely look forward to hearing from you.